Hello, grammarians. How's that for a flashback to 6th grade year, watching all your Khan Academy videos? I promise I will try not to torture you too much. So, I just want to go over the study guide with you for direct objects. I hope you're all doing well. It's nice that the weather is getting better. Go outside, get some vitamin D from the sunlight, spend time outside, get that fresh air. That's actually what I'm going to do after I make this video, so I hope you all take advantage of the nice weather as well. Alright, so just to review real quick, if you remember from the notes, a transitive verb versus intransitive verb. All action verbs, any action verb that you could think of, can be labeled as either transitive or intransitive. Either one. It won't be both, it'll only be one or the other. So the only difference is the transitive verb is an action verb that has a direct object, while an intransitive verb is an action verb without a direct object. So every single action verb is either one or the other. All right? Your direct object receives the action of the verb. I believe the definition I gave you was the recipient of the transitive verb. So what the heck does that mean? So first, you have to find it. So you find your action verb, and then you ask what. So in my example, I read Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Read is my action verb. Okay, so read what? Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire becomes my direct object. Okay, and then you have what is an indirect object. So an indirect object is much more straightforward. It receives the direct object in a sentence. In order for there to be an indirect object in a sentence, there has to be a direct object. You will never ever have a sentence that only has an indirect object. You will only ever have sentences that could have just a direct object, but in order to have an indirect object, there has to be a direct object in a sentence. And it's going to be located between the verb and the direct object. The indirect object will never come after the direct object. Did I say that right? Sorry. The indirect object will never come after the direct object or before the verb. It'll always be right between those two in a sentence. So in my example, I gave my sister a hug. First, you have to find your direct object. I gave what? A hug. There's my direct object. Who did I give a hug to? So to who did I hug? Or to who did I give the hug to? My sister. So sister would be indirect object. Now, if I had said, I gave a hug to my sister, so then to my sister comes after the direct object, like this. Oh my, can't spell. Okay, gave what? Hug. Here's my direct object. To my sister. This becomes a prepositional phrase. To is a preposition. To what? Sister, object. So this cannot be an indirect object, right? This sentence would no longer have an indirect object because I reworded it. So, excuse me, when some of you were writing your sentences and adding indirect objects, you were doing sentences like this. This does not count. I believe I left you feedback if you did it more than once and told you, hey, you could check your work and fix it on a couple of those last assignments, page 27, I believe, off the top of my head. So make sure you're putting your indirect object between the verb and the direct object where it goes in a sentence. All right, so the study guide. I am not going to go over the whole thing. I'm going to go over the questions where you had to label things and stuff. But the first part where it's asking for definitions and different questions, I'm not going to go over that because I basically just reviewed all of that. And I am sending you the study guide answers, the answer sheet, along with this video. Don't forget, and here comes my favorite phrase, I like to be tricky. Sorry, Cece, I had to do it. However, I am not going to be as tricky as I would be if we were in person. I do still want to challenge you, but I don't want to be overly, I don't want to make this too hard for you because I know it's not the same learning in person for me versus watching my videos and seeing PowerPoints online. So I'll be a little tricky, not super tricky. All right, so those questions, true and false, just make sure you're reading them. Hint, hint, I might switch up the order. I might switch them up a little bit. So make sure You're just paying attention to the true and false and the questions where I ask you to circle things and fill them out. Just pay attention, all right? So on the first section, you had to tell me if first you had to underline the action verb, and then you had to tell me if it was transitive or intransitive. So basically, you're going to underline all of the action verbs and just classify them as transitive or intransitive. All right, so Ashley threw the ball to the catcher. My action verb is threw, okay? So we're going to underline it. Now we're going to ask what to see if it has a direct object. Threw what? The ball. Direct object, okay? So we have one, so we know that this is a transitive verb. Actually, I'm going to label it above it right there. Number 2, Mr. English tripped over his feet. Sorry, this did not actually happen, but it makes me giggle every time I think about it. Sorry, Mr. English. All right, our action verb is tripped, so we're going to underline it. Now, some of you might be saying, tripped what? Feet. Look, there's a noun. However, is he actually tripping his feet? No, he didn't trip himself. Well, kind of. If you remember back to 6th grade year, we did the preposition airplane activity where you tell me where prepositions land with an airplane. You could say over his head or over his feet it landed. So this is actually a prepositional phrase. So there is not a direct object here because this cannot be your direct object. So this is actually an intransitive verb. It's an action verb, but it doesn't have a direct object. All right, number 3. Sorry, you know me and my numbers. If you'll notice on the document, this is labeled number 1 again. And I'm just going to claim the excuse, I'm an English teacher. Numbers are hard. So, Mrs. Peterson played bingo in Spanish class. Our action verb is played. Played what? Bingo. There's a direct object. So played is a transitive verb. Straight up, nice and simple. And number 2 again, because again, numbers are hard. The dog chewed on the bone. Chewed is our action verb. Okay, chewed what bone? Yes, you can answer this. However, this is a prepositional phrase. You can't really answer the airplane question, it landed on the bone. I mean, I guess you could. That'd be a really big bone for an airplane to land on. Another hint about direct objects, if you'll notice in these 2 sentences, the direct object has the word the between the verb and the direct object, and then we have no words between played and bingo. And then even in the example down here, I gave my sister a hug. You have the indirect object between the verb and the direct object, and then little words like a. There are not going to be a lot of words between your verb and your direct object when there's just a direct object in a sentence, or even when there's an indirect. Okay, there's not going to be a lot of additional words. So if you see words like prepositions, adverbs, other words are typically going to be a hint that there's no direct object. So no direct object means this is an intransitive verb. Excuse me. All right, the next section, you had to, I'm actually going to turn this over so it's less confusing. All you had to do on this section was tell me the direct object. So in number 3, our action verb is gave. Gave what? Candy. Okay, direct object. Number 4, Sierra gave a present to Caroline. Gave what? Present. Direct object. Number 5, Harry threw his invisibility cloak over his shoulders. Threw what? Cloak. All right, this is the part where a lot of you would probably ask, Miss Bischoff, is it cloak? Is it just cloak? Or is it invisibility cloak, which I spelled wrong, invisibility cloak. Normally, I would say, hey, I don't care. Both are the correct answer. Invisibility is just an adverb describing cloak. However, Jupiter is picky, and no matter what I do, sometimes the answer key just ends up being wrong. So, if you would put the answer in and you know that it's right and you feel like it got marked wrong by Jupiter unjustly, please message me when you're taking the quiz or after you take the quiz and let me know, and I will just go through and give you the credit where it belongs, okay? So don't stress too much. when you're trying to find direct objects. If you feel like Jupiter graded it unfairly, wrongly, unjustly, how dare it, just message me and let me know. All right, so cloak or invisibility cloak, here's the direct object. Number 6, Jamie sent a Snapchat to Keelan. Sent what? Snapchat. Now here, there is no indirect object, okay? If we wanted this to be a sentence with an indirect object, we would say Jamie sent Keelan a Snapchat. But since we put Keelan, the person who's receiving the Snapchat, after the direct object, this is a prepositional phrase. Okay, so there is no indirect object. The next, she sent a letter. There's one more. Sent what? Action verb is sent. Sent what? Letter. Letter is our direct object. Okay, the next section, you needed to circle the indirect object. So who or what is receiving the direct object in a sentence? So the first thing you do is find your action verb and direct object and then see who is receiving it between it. The man gave the boys their trophy. Gave is our action verb. Gave what? Trophy. So trophy is our direct object. Gave the trophy to who? Boys. So boys is our indirect object. Number 9, Braxton threw Kristen the baseball. Threw what? Baseball, direct object. To who? Kristen, indirect object. Number 10, Miss Bischoff sent her students an email. Sent what? An email, direct object, because I can't send you, unfortunately. Sent an email to who? Students, indirect object. And 11, Mr. English gives his students homework. Gives what? Homework. Oops, sorry, just direct object. We're not circling that.